This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Monday. How's everybody doing today? With the number of ounces of silver needed to buy an ounce of gold near 30-year highs, silver is a bargain price when compared to gold, and it's a perfect time to protect a portion of your savings with silver. Silver Gold Bull has a wide variety of best value silver for every budget. Simply text or email Grahame for details. It's all down in the show notes. Whether you are a seasoned investor or new to precious metals, Grahame will work with you to answer all your questions and recommend the best products to meet your investing goals. Anytime you're on silvergoldbull.com or .ca, just make sure to leave a note saying, "Hey, I heard about you on the Shaun Newman Podcast." Bow Valley Credit Union is your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution, and they're proud to present the first in Canada gold collateral lending. All of you can lend against your physical gold and silver for favorable rates. It's like a HELOC on your gold and silver, and if you don't have any, you can also get a loan to purchase that, and they can help you out with all of that. Just shoot them an email at welcome@bowvalleycu.com and say hello to Leanna. She'll get your BVCU membership started today. It's all down in the show notes. Profit River, they got a brand new website, easy to use, and any purchases, use the coupon code SNP. They are the major retailer of firearms, optics, and accessories. They serve all of Canada. And if you're making a purchase, whether it's in person, over the phone, online, just remember to reference SNP. And you can also email them at smp@profitriver.com. Once again, all down in the show notes, folks. They are the major retailer of firearms, optics, and accessories, serving all of Canada. So no matter where you're at in Canada, they can get your firearms to you. And just go to profitriver.com. Windsor Plywood, builders of the podcast studio, and a whole bunch else, I might add. When it comes to wood, these are the guys. We're talking mantles, decks, windows, doors, sheds, studio tables, studios. They got a lot of character wood. Stop in and see the team at Windsor Plywood today. Say hello. Stop in and say hello to Carly. Tell them I sent you, and get your backyard project or whatever project for summer started today. We have the new studio happening here in 2025. If you're interested in being a part of that, we're planning August for a bit of a cleanup in the yard. We got some trees we got to knock down and a couple other things. If you're interested in being a part of that, shoot me a text and I can give you a bit more details on that. If you want to, we're looking for skills, labor, materials, money. If there's something else that, you want to be on the value for value wall, just shoot me a text and we will get that in there for you. I want to remind everybody before you watch today or as you're watching that, if you're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a review, make sure to hit the retweet button, make sure to just share it if you're enjoying it. And it's the month here while I'm off on holidays, so there's no Tuesday episodes for the month of July. And Fridays, we have a guest co-host with twos, and then Thursdays are Throwback Thursdays. So you can shoot me a text. This will be the month where if you don't hear back from me for some time, it's just because I'm spending time with the wife and kids, and look forward to being back fully here in August. Either way, let's get on to that tale of the tape. He's a former attorney and host of the Financial Survival Network since 2010 with over 10,000 episodes. He's got a new book out, The World According to Martin Armstrong, Conversations with the Master Forecaster. I'm talking about Kerry Lutz, so buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. Today I'm joined by Kerry Lutz. Sir, thanks for hopping on.
Hey, man, it's great to be with you, Shaun. I knew a little bit about you, but listening to the breadth of your show and the influence, it made me realize that legacy media is dying an inglorious death, and it can't happen a moment too soon.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. Now, it's your first time on the show, and there's plenty to get to, including a book you have that is like, I had this idea. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Well, right there. It's The World According to Martin Armstrong, Conversations with Master Forecaster. And I want to hear all about it because But before we get there, it's your first time on. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Kerry. Instead of reading off your accolades,
Sure.
I prefer to have the guest, point out what's important to the audience.
Well, I've been doing this podcast, Financial Survival Network, for 14 years now, over 10,000 interviews. I know that's hard to believe, but for the first 6-7 years, I just was nonstop grinding out content till I realized I was competing against myself. I'm a recovering attorney, author. As you've seen, I've written, I think, 8 books. I'm about to drop one called HOA Emperor, about a guy who goes into witness protection in the U.S. and he winds up in Florida, my state, taking over homeowners associations. And the tagline is, "The mob was tough, but the board was murder." And so kind of a comedy spoof. And, I've just been into Austrian economics since my early 20s. I was in college and I saw the special by Rose and Milton Friedman, Free to Choose. And, it dealt with like Hong Kong being so successful. And why did they become successful? Because they were left to their own demise. The government, Britain was being so far away. And it gave examples about how the free market worked best and how things aren't bad until the government starts sticking its nose into things. And that kind of set me down a lifelong path of being a free market person. During the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, life was great, made tons of money, and everything seemed to be fine. So I didn't think much about the Austrian school and Mises and such. But then when the financial collapse hit in starting in 07, 8, and 9, that was a wake-up call to me that the system that was constructed wasn't working, and that people didn't even know why this thing happened. Having been in credit, consumer credit matters, myself being an expert in it, I knew exactly why it happened, because the system didn't care about honesty or integrity. It just cared about volume. And you cranked out all these liar loans, no income, no asset loans, self-stated income loans, liar loans, we call them. And that's why the thing collapsed. And so I felt people needed to know about that. And hence, I started the show back in 2010 and been going nonstop ever since.
So if I do my math correct, so in 15 years, 2010 till now, you've done 10,000 episodes. That's almost 1,000 episodes a year. Well, not quite, but you get the point. That's a lot of episodes.
I was doing, when I started, I was working 7 days a week. I loved every second of it. I still do. And I was doing 3 to 4 episodes a day. So that was, literally 25 episodes for the first year per week. And then, I backed off slowly, gradually. Then I was doing 3 to 4 episodes a day, 5 days a week. And I backed off over time. Now I do 3 per week, 2 to 3. If something comes up, I'll do another one. And I've gotten more into writing because you get a little burned out on this. I still have my enthusiasm for it. I just can't do it like I used to. But and then I did some other shows, and I've produced other shows for people. Had a show called Viral Podcasting, and and like I said, my numbers say like 6,000, but I had 3,500 episodes on another podcast server that when I canceled the show, they all disappeared, which I wasn't expecting. I would have kept it going. So it's over 10,000.
I just think of here in the month of July, we've been doing Throwback Thursdays as a way to give me, I do 5 episodes a week. And to give me a little break to spend time with my family and my wife, we go back and relive. I'm over 1,000 now. And I think like when I listen to myself back in the day, I'm just like, oh my God, like, but you think there's 1,000 conversations and taking in different information. When I hear 10,000, well, that's 10 times where I'm at. Like, how much have you learned, or like maybe what's one of the things that surprised you along the way that you learned in those 10,000? You're like, I would have never known this if I hadn't have done this.
Yeah, well, I would have never known how many people were as fed up with the system and it being rigged as me. I would have never thought that I could stick to anything that long. I usually was a kind change careers. Yeah, well, I had an initial family business. I stuck in that way too long, but eventually sold it. So in that business, I was there for like 16 years, but then I would kind of just switch off. And I didn't think I was going to be doing this as long as I have. And I didn't think it was going to be as successful as it was. When I started, I had come off a legal practice. It was highly profitable. I didn't really need to work for 10 years. And I just did this instead. And then this took off once I started connecting with mining companies and getting sponsors. And I was always into gold and silver, and eventually got into crypto. So, it just it takes on a life of itself, right? I mean, it becomes your identity, who you are. I was one of the first people to call myself a professional podcaster.
When you talk about gold, silver, crypto, I just, once again, I go in my short time span of staring at the world and trying to make sense of it. We've got a gold and silver company who's the major sponsor of this. I don't think that's any surprise. And hearing you talk, I'm like, well, probably, it shouldn't be a surprise to me either that was on your journey as well. Across all those things, how did you begin to figure out? And I don't like the word conspiracy theory because I mean, like right now, what's the running joke? 6 months and it's fact pretty much. But like across your journey of 15 years of doing this, how did you start to decipher what's actually really happening? What's kind of noise off to the side?
All right. So I should have worn my T-shirt that says, I identify as a conspiracy theorist. My pronouns are told you so. I don't like to get too deep into the conspiracy of like Rothschilds and that it's all been contrived, but everything is a conspiracy. When you go back to Lincoln, there was a whole conspiracy involved to take him out, dealing with Canada and the UK, with England. England helped foment the United States Civil War in an effort to break up the colonies and kind of reclaim part of it. So maybe Trump trying to take you guys over is just flipping the script on a conspiracy that was long since exposed, but is forgotten now. So many things are conspiracies. Like conspiracy theory itself was a term that was created by the CIA to attack people who questioned the findings of the Warren Commission. And there's a conspiracy if ever there was one. The whole war paradigm, like war is a racket. Smedley Butler, most decorated Marine general in history, he said that back in the 20s. And he was involved in every major U.S. military action from the 1880s on to World War I. And there were dozens of them that really don't get explained or covered very much in the history books. But, the United States invading Costa Rica and I think Nicaragua over nationalizing banana plantations, gunboat diplomacy, where the country doesn't pay its debts, and we send the Navy out there as a collection agent. And he just said, basically, Smedley Butler, that he was muscle for private interests who were basically conducting these things. U.S. was conducting national policy to further the interests of a few wealthy people here. And, I could get on and on. Assassinations, all of this. Lee Harvey Oswald, he was in all likelihood a government asset. My parents always said that LBJ was responsible for it. It was before the Warren Commission. It was just, that was a classic one. Or the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life, or the attempt on Trump's life. It happens over and over and over again. So I don't want to say that there's been one, conspiracy taking place and everything's a part of it. That far, I'm not willing to go, that there's this Illuminati who are running things. But I will say that things happen, and there's a lot of unexplained coincidences in life. And, when you look at it, it's just pattern recognition. Like, I made a call on May 26th that there would be George Floyd riots 2.0 brought on by immigration enforcement in the U.S., by ICE raids, taking out the illegal alien criminals. And 10 days later, LA riots erupted. I mean, I totally nailed it, but I didn't nail it because I could see the future. I nailed it because I could see the pattern. And, like the George Floyd riots were purely manufactured. That was a conspiracy. It was in place, just waiting for the right video to pop up of the police, beating some poor black guy or whatever. That was totally contrived. And then, you start looking at cases as a lawyer that go before the Supreme Court, and they're contrived. They aren't really disputes, Roe versus Wade. So I don't want to say that everything is a conspiracy led by a few key families in the world, but I'd say that there's a lot of separate conspiracies going on that, kind of rambling on here a bit. But if you think it's a conspiracy, if the explanation is just too pat, too clean, there's no coincidences in life, So the odds are that's the case. Other times, conspiracies happen after the fact, because never let a crisis go to waste, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. So like the financial collapse of 07 through 09, I don't know that was really contrived, but I think it was opportunistically glommed onto and made a conspiracy after it happened. It was too convenient for the powers that be to let that go by without getting tons of billions and billions of money. Certainly you could make the argument that the pandemic was a scamdemic, right? Nobody can argue with that at this point. I don't think. I don't know. What do you think about it? What's your feeling about conspiracies here, Shaun?
Well, I used to be a little more gauged in how I looked at things, but then I lived through COVID, and I talked openly about, just brought on conversations about it, right? And watched how society unraveled or authoritarianism tightened up. Just this week, we had, a friend of the show, Eva Chipyak, a lawyer here in Canada, get debanked from one of the major banks in Canada, said she's too risky. And you're like, so you can go, oh, that's a one-off, except it's not. It happened to someone else, and it happened to other people. And if you go back to when they froze the bank accounts, this isn't a one-off anymore. This is, you can see, I like what you said there, the pattern recognition. Once you start to see it, Martin always talks about the cycles, and the pattern recognition of it doesn't allow you to see the future, but you can start to see where we're heading. which would be predicting. And, I guess, one of the lines that I threw on my sheet was, it's all about what's next. That's, one of the things you love to say. Where we're sitting, what do you see, Kerry? Like what patterns are you spotting that people should know about?
Okay. Certainly continuing currency debasement. You don't need to be Martin Armstrong or Milton Friedman to figure that one out. And all corruption leads from corrupt money. It all comes from that, because you can trace it back to the family, the demise of the family in the West. Before we had inflation, a guy could, have a middle-class job, support a family, own his own home, save some money, and basically lead a middle-class life. Now, both parents are working, both families are working. I mean, both mother and father. They got to either send their kid to daycare or have a nanny or something, or the kid's a latchkey kid like I was. And the idea of not having the steady parental figure at home, I'm not saying that it doesn't work, but if it's not planned for and controlled, is a disaster. And you look at our inner cities with one-parent families, I guess Canada to a lesser extent than the U.S., but it certainly is happening there. And that is the demise of these cities, where they offer the best benefits and they encourage bad behavior. And, that's a perfect example of what inflation does, how it debases a society once you move away from sound money. Certainly the war cycle is going to go on, but I'm not as pessimistic as Martin is about it. I just don't think it's going to go full out World War III, but I'm certainly open to the possibility. I do believe there is a thing called divine providence, which has the ability to overrule cycles and patterns. And I think one of it happened on July 13th, 2024 in the U.S., on the attempt on Trump's life. I had seen a prophecy from a respected Vedic astrologer who said between July 1st and July 11th that there would be a political assassination. He was 2 days off, the guy, but it didn't happen. So there is always the chance that even though the patterns, the cycles, everything affirm that it's going to happen, it doesn't happen. Unfortunately, you don't really know that. And, Martin could very well be right. I'm never one to argue about it. I mean, for instance, I saw 12 or 13 things that he said in the book that came true. I put it in the AI, and there were 18 things. Now, some of them predated the book, but they're mentioned in the book. But even when I first talked to him in 2011, he said the Dow was going to hit 23,000, I think, by 2018, and it did it in 2017. So, there were things that I even missed, and I wrote the book of what he called. So I never bet against Marty, because his record is better than anyone else's out there. And but talk about conspiracies. There is a conspiracy against him, and I'm sure you've seen it, where on the YouTube you get like a zillion trolls throwing shade at him, throwing dirt, saying, talking about his stint in prison and all these things, as if they matter, as if they make any difference to what he happens to be saying at the time. That's a conspiracy. Well, who's behind it? I don't know. But one thing I do know is governments don't like when there's a guy who can just say, this is going to happen on such and such day, And then it happens because it destroys their narrative that nobody could have seen it coming. Nobody could have seen the crash of 87 coming. Nobody could see the unpegging of the euro from the franc. No one could have seen Russia's collapse or the crash of the UK, of the English pound. No one could have seen that except somebody did. That's what makes Martin dangerous. Not so much that he calls these things, it's that he undermines the contention, the narrative that all these events are random and aren't cycles. Now, I'm not going to say they're the result of conspiracies. Some of them certainly are, but for the most part, they're the result of cycles that are very predictable and foreseeable.
Well, one of the things I had Martin up here in Alberta in May. He was on stage for me, and I got to chauffeur him around for a day, which was something I won't soon forget. And I was picking his brain, and I've said this lots on here, and I said it on stage, and I didn't know who Martin was until 2020. And showed it to my 3 older brothers. We were listening to Michael Campbell's conference of Money Talks.
Sure. Yep.
And Martin started talking about 2032. And I walked down there and I'm like, 2032? I mean, that's 12 years later. What the hell is this guy talking about? Since then, I've had Martin on the show an awful lot. And I was just, I guess, back then I was like, how on earth is that going to get to where it is? And then you sit in 2025 and you go, oh, you can start to see it. Your thoughts on 2032 only being 7 years away, and maybe some of the things people should be paying attention to, probably financially would be the best spot, Kerry, but if there's other things you think are worth noting, fire away.
Well, first, I'm a gold and silver guy through and through. I've been buying gold since 1999, and silver I stacked up on after the crash in 08 and 09. So I'm well ahead. And I was kind of resistant to cryptocurrencies. But, like I've seen the light here. And I think that cryptos are going to play a vital role here. I don't know how yet. Okay, that I don't know. But I see it more and more every day. And to the point now, Shaun, where basically half the Republican Party's contributions are coming from crypto-related interests. No wonder they're so pro-crypto, huh? How's that for a conspiracy? Talk about conspiracy theories. I think the U.S. is going to attempt to inflate Bitcoin to 50 million a coin. It's holding hundreds of thousands. We don't even know how much they're holding. And if what Marty says is true, that Bitcoin was created by some alphabet agency, then they could be holding a couple million coins. You get that thing up to 10, 50 million. It's not hard to envision because, Shaun, if you had invested 10 cents into Bitcoin back in 2010, it would be worth about $119,000 now. So that's a millionfold return in 15 years. Nothing in human history has ever done that. So to think it might go up 1,000-fold more from here, or 100-fold, it's not beyond the realm of credulity to think that. And then they're sitting on all this Bitcoin and they just use it to pay off the debt and recapitalize some entitlement programs and then walk away from it and say, America, you're on your own now. We've done our part. I'm telling you, it's like, this is the Great Reset.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people, certainly myself, when it came to crypto, I've been hesitant up until I don't know. I've known lots of different Bitcoiners over the course of the show's run, and I've brought them on. I've tried to understand it, and I'm still trying to get a better grasp of it. But one of the things lots of people tell me is, I can't get into it. It's way too high now. And I'm like, but then I listen to you, and I'm like, I don't think people understand how high Bitcoin can go. Like, I just don't think they grasp that. They see 100 and I don't know where it sits today, but it's in the range of 115,000 to
Yeah,
120,000 US.
119 US. Yeah.
There you go. And so people hear that and they go, "Oh, I missed the boat." But when I listen to you, I go, "Missed the boat? The boat is still here. It's not even departed yet."
Yeah. No, it's like here, listen to what ChatGPT says why, and I asked it to direct it directly to you. Hey, Shaun, you've had some sharp guests on lately talking about the monetary system, but here's the simple truth. Bitcoin is the future because trust is broken and code doesn't lie. For decades, we trusted central banks to preserve purchasing power. Instead, they gave us weaponized inflation, asset bubbles, and fiscal addiction with no exit plan. So, and then it talks about enter Bitcoin, fixed supply, 21 million, no central bank, no printing press, no bailouts, verifiable, transparent, borderless, immune to politics, bank failures, and Jerome Powell's mood swings. You got to admit the thing has a sense of humor, Shaun. It's digital property with the scarcity of gold and the portability of email. It's not just money, it's exit velocity from a debt-soaked fiat system. Ask Argentina, ask Nigeria, ask Canadians who saw their bank accounts frozen for disagreeing with Trudeau. Bitcoin is monetary independence in code form, and it's already replacing gold as the safe haven for the next generation. That's your generation, because I got a couple on you. If you think the system is rigged, and I know you do, Bitcoin isn't just the future, it's the escape hatch. It signed it with my name, but this was ChatGPT telling you that. All right? So, and I consider it in many ways, it's the sum of human intelligence to some extent, with its own lens and its own distortions. But that's what it came up with. And if I had read that 12 years ago, I wouldn't say I'd be retired, but my economic situation, I would be a Bitcoin whale. Like my friend Trace Mayer, who just opened a family office. He never sold any of his Bitcoin, told me to buy it at $5. So there it is, man. Like, but a lot of this is being driven like unconsciously, like something's wrong, like you and I study it, so we get it. But the average normie, as we call them, goes to the supermarket and says, why the hell did my beer just go up 50 cents when there's no inflation? And they know something at a gut level is wrong. And then this starts you down the path. I was just trained to distrust the government and the economy and everything. And then being a lawyer, one of the things you trained in, at least I was lie detection. And man, like you can't keep up with the number of lies coming out of our world's capitals here, our politicians. It's all lies.
You talking about Bitcoin, but then you brought in AI to explain it, which it does an exceptional job. And certainly I've seen the benefits of AI. I don't think of I've ran into a single podcaster at this point that doesn't use AI in some form or shape. Where do you see AI going in the next, once again, to 2032 beyond? Because I love how you just put that in, and then you're just like, this is what it says, and you read it off. You're like, if you're listening to that, you go, man alive, you can try and argue with what it just said, but that's pretty coherent. Where are your thoughts on AI here in the years to come?
This is the scary part, in my opinion. It's scarier. Governments will be governments. Assume that we're always going to be on the brink of World War III. I mean, that's since I've been a kid, since I've been alive, since we were ducking and covering in the auditorium like that was going to protect us from a nuclear blast. We've always been on the brink. So assume that we're not going to go over it, or it'll be a controlled burn, whatever. Or maybe the conspiracy is to reduce the world's population by 90%. I don't know the answer to that. But AI, it's the great equalizer, but it's also the great disruptor. And I have a Tesla. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I got it because it's a cool car. Nothing to do with its green aspirations, which I don't buy into anyways. But in the US, the largest segment of employment in the United States is driver. 10 million people are drivers, whether they're Uber drivers, truck drivers, limo drivers, they're drivers, deliveries, Amazon, 10 million people. And the FSD is to the point now, it will be within the next 6 months. It's going to eliminate over time all of those jobs. When I asked AI about it, it said in 10 years, you will be perceived as an insane person for wanting to drive your own car, and you'll be banished. You will be, just ostracized for wanting to drive your own car for what right now is the most normal of behaviors. So driving is just like, forget it, unless you live in an inner city and you take mass transit all over. But for most of us in the world here in North America, driving is fundamental to our day-to-day existence. So if it's going to change that, and I look at how it's changed over the last 3 years, I've been having the full self-driving. Initially, it would get you killed if you just you couldn't rely upon it. Now, 95% of the time, that car is driving itself, and I'm just along for the ride. So that's just one thing, and it's happening so quickly. The improvements, incremental improvements on the full self-driving are happening so fast now. Like over 6 months, it's probably 10 or 20 times better than it was the prior 6 months. In another 6 months, it could be 50 to 100 times. But the only thing is, the only requirement for FSD to be widely adapted is it just has to drive better than humans. I would argue that it's done that already in many cases, but in the next 6 months, it'll be in virtually every instance it's better driver. Like I get onto I-95 here, that's our highway of death in Florida, and I get on there, late at night, nobody's on the road, get into the left lane, set it to 85 miles an hour, and it gets me home in 25 minutes. It basically brings me to my front doorstep now, except that the only thing is in my HOA, it has a thing about gates. Sometimes it recognizes them and sometimes it doesn't. So I know I got to hit the brake to stop it when we get to the gate. So,
Are you saying then, if I'm, so this full self-driving, so like where you're talking about in 10 years, you'll be an insane man to be driving yourself.
Yeah.
Which means, like if I think about the trucking industry in particular, how we get goods and goods across this continent, what you're pointing to is eventually it'll be autonomous, right? Because it'll be safer. And it only takes one bad car wreck. When I just point back to here in Saskatchewan, when the Humboldt bus crash happened, the semi went through a bus, killing, way too many hockey players, young men. And that shook the nation. It takes something like that where a full-scale adoption will happen rapidly. The technology will be sitting there, and not overnight, but it'll feel like that. You'll just see trucking companies switching to it, and they'll make obsolete a whole industry of drivers.
Yeah. Here. I just typed it in. I don't mean this to be an AI. You're talking to the AI, but here. 10 years from now, people who want to drive their own cars manually in a world rapidly dominated by FSD, full self-driving adoption, will face a mix of legal restrictions, social pressures, and geographic containment. Here's what's likely coming. Manual driving will be treated like smoking. Regulations will stack against you. Urban bans on human driving. car culture will shrink but not die. Narrative manipulation will play a role. Think about that. So it's for your own good. You know, we're keeping everybody safe. That's why you aren't allowed to drive your car. Of course, they'll be able to restrict your freedom too, right, Shaun? I mean, they'll be able to say where you can go and when you can go there. And it's like, oh, I want to go take a nice trip with the family and go past Area 51 and check out Roswell, and say, no, forbidden area, you can't go there, sorry, and it takes you on another route.
Well,
That's
it.
like,
That's a wild thought. Like I just think last summer, um, 3 young kids, wife, we spent 24 days on the road. We drove the United States, right? And even this summer, we just got back from Michigan. We drove across to Lake Huron and and spent some time there and drove back. And you think if all of a sudden you become restricted, what type of world is that? Because an automobile has really represented freedom to go wherever the heck you want, whenever you want.
yeah, and the politicians have hated it from day one. It's like it's too hard to control a population that's free to do whatever they want. Here's what it said: narrative manipulation will play a role. The media will portray manual drivers as dangerous or selfish as they once did with anti-maskers. Expect op-eds like, why letting grandpa drive is a threat to public safety, or should you be allowed to drive when AI can do it safer? I mean, is this hard to foresee?
No, it isn't. The sad thing is, Kerry, maybe not the sad thing. I guess just we've lived it. I mean, I lived it. So it's not like it's just how long until that you start to see the pattern of it starting to creep in more and more and more. And then what event happens where it becomes full scale adoption almost overnight, except that's the whole thing about seeing the pattern. It'll feel like overnight, but if you've been watching the pattern, the fact you're bringing it up right now is probably the start of the pattern, right? I'm going to start to see it more and more.
And that's where AI comes in. It's your great equalizer, because using AI, you can see those patterns. And, it isn't always right. It can't predict the future, but it can recognize a pattern. And it's just like with the crypto. And so the AI is going to change everything, because, let's not even talk about robots with AI. Okay, but they're coming, and that's going to be huge. But just brain jobs now, like loan underwriter, company security analyst, financial analyst, all these things, it's just going to upend. And, I think the Trump White House has been using AI. I call it Trump GPT, has been using AI throughout the second term, which is why it's been so consequential. You could argue about policies. Believe me, I'm no fan of government control and debt, escalating debt, but there's other things I do approve of. Every president's a mixed bag. Every government is. But to pull off what they pulled off as quickly as they have, it could have only been done by AI. Plus, the confidentiality. Nobody has talked or leaked these plans before before they happened. That, to me, is the biggest tell that AI was involved.
Why?
So it's happening.
Why the confidentiality? Why does that signal you AI?
Because loose lips sink ships. Ordinarily, to pull off that number of executive orders, it would have required a medium-sized law firm working nonstop for 2 years. All right, and that would have certainly led to leaks. But regardless, confidentiality agreements and all that, they get broken all the time. So fact is that they're able to do this. No sooner did Trump take his hand off the Bible, getting sworn in, he was signing executive orders. Each one of those is hundreds of hours of work here. It's not like you just write something and said, this is it. proclamation. It's got to be harmonized with the law in effect and prior executive orders revoking them, and treaties and it's executive agreements.
So you're basically saying that it points to AI because, you know, it would have taken a team of, let's say, 20 people. It doesn't matter if it was 200, but let's just go with 20.
Yeah,
and by
sure.
by effect of using AI, it could have been 3, and that's just 3 or 17 less lips to go spread what they're about to do.
Yeah. And, you know, like I think his trusted circle, you know, and he's got them in there now. They're in the cabinet. Some surprises in there, but those people aren't saying anything.
One other thing here before I let you out. Just going back to the war cycle. One of the things that we've been talking about in, I don't know, the over the coffee table, I guess, has been the amount of talk about drafts, like military drafts coming in. Do you foresee that happening in the United States or North America?
No, I mean, I lived through Vietnam. I was young. My brother was of draft age. I'm actually working on a book called Draft Dodgers, which is going to be the history of conscription, going from ancient times, the Wall of China that was built by conscripted labor, to present. And, you know, the way that people got out of serving in Vietnam, a lot of them moved up to Canada. My parents were willing to send my brother up to Canada, but my father managed to get him into the National Guard. So he just put down riots in Louisiana instead. Certain countries, it's acceptable. It's no longer acceptable in this country. And it becomes an economics thing too. If the jobs are scarce, then more people join the army and the armed forces. And, you know, the composition of the armed forces is different than it used to be, I think, because now that it's a volunteer army. I mean, there's still kids that get into trouble, and the judge says either you go to jail or you go to the army. Take your pick. That happens in the U.S. It's not as out there and open as it used to be. Like, that was a prime recruiting method of the army. You get into trouble as a kid, you could go to jail, or you could go sell yourself to Uncle Sam. And I guess to some extent it still happens, but it's not publicized. And, you know, like, and with many of these kids with no fathers and such, going to the army is the best thing that could have ever happened to them. But, you know, it's kind of like student loans. They don't really explain all the potential risks to you when they present the loan package, you know? So, but I don't think in certain countries, yes, certainly it's worked really well in Ukraine and Russia, right? And it just pisses off the populace and leads to problems governing. So it's a last resort under any circumstances.
Well, if I read between the lines of what you just said on how they get basically numbers in military to go up, you have people without jobs. Well, if you go down the road of where we're heading, there's going to be people out of work. They're going to be looking for things. If you look at the other idea of, like, you can go to prison or you can go serve, if economics or people's financials go in the toilet, which we could both probably agree that that's where it's heading or already there, that would be an idea as well, with getting around the idea of straight on conscription of a military draft. And all those things are at play where you could boost numbers of a military, I would think.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And, you know, you just made me think of something, you know, that people without jobs, economic collapse, universal basic income, all of that stuff, it's all on the table now, you know?
Yeah.
And
I remember hearing the first time I heard universal basic income was a Joe Rogan podcast back in 2018. I thought that was an insane idea. And yet, here we are in 2025, and it's become you can just see the tea leaves of them starting to seed the idea more and more and more. And when you talk about pattern recognition, I mean, you can just see where it's heading, and whether that's in 2027 or 2032 or 2040, it's going to become more and more of an idea, especially you play out some of the ideas we've been talking about here today.
There's no other way. I'll just leave you with one thought. There's a story, it's apocryphal. A guy in Berlin in the 20s, he's a bellman at a hotel. An American, guest at the hotel is so grateful for his great service. He gives him a $20 eagle, gold eagle, double eagle. And a year later, after the Weimar Republic, the currency collapse, that bellman bought the hotel for that one gold double eagle. Think about it now. If you own a tenth of a Bitcoin, it's roughly $12,000. And after whatever is going to happen, you might be able to buy up the entire block around you, because it'll be that precious metals, gold, silver, Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum will be a currency as well. You're never going to use Bitcoin to go to your Starbucks or your Tim Hortons to buy a cup of coffee. It's too valuable for that, and it's just not going to be used as a medium of exchange. But as a store of value, I think that's where it's going to be.
Kerry, appreciate you hopping on today. I hope it won't be the only time, but I appreciate you hopping on and giving me some time this morning.
Hey, great. It was really fun. And I hope you'll do me the favor of coming on my show one day soon, and love to have you on.
Would love to do that. Thanks again.